mean,
start asking how can I instead of why can't I?
I mean, anything I say on a podcast, somebody can go off and turn into a movie. You know, I want to save some of these for myself.
Then you also have to understand that there's a business on the other side, and there's an audience that business needs to serve. I think we've touched on this kind of here and there, but I do get a lot of inquiries and questions about getting your story, like how you have a script, right? But you don't have anyone around you. And we've talked about it a number of times, just how the Elephant Man came to be and how it was your babysitter's boyfriend who had written it. And so I think there are some misconceptions, but also probably valid ones, that to produce your film or have your film produced, you got to kind of move to LA, go to film school, do all these things.
Well, yeah, but I mean, those used to be the path.
Yeah.
And it's still a path. I mean, certainly people who go to film school have connections just from the fact that they've met other people who are doing what they do and at a high level. And they tend to have contacts that start them on the process of being able to make films.
It's a bit of a gamble, though, right? Because if your class, I mean, I think the average person that goes to film school doesn't end up having a career, and then there's probably a handful that do, right?
Yes.
And so you're kind of throwing a couple $100,000 at something to maybe in 15 years have some connections.
There's nothing harder. And do I think apprenticing on a film, either it's complementary or it's instead of, sometimes you wind up having people who come up in the business, probably more in the technical areas. If you want to be a camera person, I mean, going to a film school isn't necessarily the best way. I mean, it's a good way to get your hands on equipment, but if you could actually work on a film next to somebody who's actually doing that job, it's more of a technical training.
And nowadays you can learn so much by just grabbing a $500 camera somewhere at Best Buy and just starting to
you can make movies with any kind of cameras. I keep thinking of
Soderbergh, is it?
Soderbergh, who made 2 movies on his iPhone.
Yeah. Now that's true, and there is a bit of a caveat, because the actor's not going to cost you less because you're using an iPhone, and the locations aren't going to cost you less, and the crew and stuff, but it is, I mean, $80,000 Panavision lenses and a $100,000 camera body, that's not realistic for most people,
it isn't. So. But the thing about it is, the barrier to entry is no longer impossible. Anybody can tell a story with the tools that are readily available to most people.
And it is a show me what you've done kind of industry, right? I think this is going back to the script part of it, because if I have an idea for a script, I think the one thing that is, in my opinion, important, and counter me or compliment if you want, an idea is not enough. If I met you on the street, I might have an idea, but you're not going to do the work for me to turn that idea into a script unless you're so bought into it that you think this is just going to be the next thing that you want to focus on for 2 years.
That's true. I think, I'd need to find that the idea is worked out. I mean, anybody can come up with an idea. Every day I'm walking down the street and I see something and I say, oh, that could be an interesting story. That could be, a friend of mine, for example, wrote me, a friend of his had a print store. This was an immigrant from South America, but he had come here legally, and he wound up, it was the American dream. He decided he wanted to be American. He went through, got his papers, got everything, wound up opening a print store in Los Angeles.
Posters, cards.
Make cards, stuff like that. That was his business, and he was very good at it. One day, there was a robbery at the store. The police came in. They wound up catching the guys, but not until they'd almost destroyed the entire store that he lived in. Oh. He had nothing to do with it, and he said, well, isn't the police department responsible for fixing they destroyed it. They came in, they broke the window. They came in to get this guy, and in the course of trying to get the perpetrator, they destroyed his store.
Sounds like a film shoot.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, I get it. But he went to the city, and the city said, "Hey, there's nothing we can do. You know, it's not."
Yeah.
And he literally lost his business as a result of an action.
It would have been better off not calling the cops.
That
basically.
happened because the cops had come. He has now taken that case. He took it to the city. He's using every resource he has because he still believes in the American dream. And he says, "I came to this country and it was the infrastructure that destroyed my business, and somebody has to pay for this."
Yeah.
And who knows whether he's going to win. The only reason I'm saying this, a friend of mine sent this to me and said, "Do you think this is a story that you could do a movie about this guy?"
It's a great example because that's the type of thing you hear.
I said, it could be a very good story, but the end of the story hasn't been told yet. I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, he's taking it to the highest court in the state. If he wins, it's a wonderful story about the fact that justice was delayed but finally gotten. On the other hand, if he loses, it's another guy who got screwed by the system.
Now, let's use this story as an example, though, because that's a great sample type of thing that I hear all the time.
Sure.
Oh, I had a hard life. I moved here from Portugal.
Yeah.
My family was this. I got lost. I got kidnapped. Okay, cool. That's interesting, deep.
Yeah.
We have, I believe everybody has a story that's worth telling in a way.
Yeah, I think most people do.
Yeah.
Somewhere in their
The
lives.
question then becomes, so in this case, what's the ending? But let's say even if he gets his money back, right? They take care of it. How do you start classifying the level of story? Because obviously having Gary Oldman play the lead in Darkest Hour, the story of how Winston Churchill became prime minister and won the World War II.
I think I know where you're going with this, because on a certain level, it's an after-school special. You know, it's like unknowns doing it.
$500,000 movie
for television,
Indeed.
and it's a nice little story.
Yeah.
And what brings it to a larger audience and makes it a bigger story is really about how it's done, how the story is written, what the struggles were, and ways to make it more interesting, and probably mostly how it's cast. It becomes Spotlight, the movie Spotlight. It's all well-known actors. It won an Academy Award, and it's an interesting story, and a lot of people could have told that story in other ways. What made it a feature? Well, you had Mark Ruffalo, you had lots of other good actors in it, you had... the story was elevated and made into something a little bit more. Yet, could that story have been an after-school special, a small little thing for a 60-minute episode, something like that? Sure, it could have. But they made it into something more than that.
So where do you go and say, okay, well, this is a $500,000 movie. We can shoot non-union in New York City, guerrilla the shit out of it, and get it done. And this one is one that we need $45 million for, and we're going to cast with stars.
It's hard to figure out what is the thing that makes it special, other than
I
the
think
execution. I don't know.
You just inadvertently kind of said something there. What is the thing? And that's I hear that a lot. Like, well, what's the thing about?
Yeah, what is that?
It's
thing
like
that
you can't
makes it...
say what it is ahead of time, but you kind of know it when you hear it, and you say, this is Fiddler on the Roof. It's not about a Jewish family, and it's just a Jewish movie and very small. It's every immigrant's story, or it's a story of change from one generation to the next, right? So everybody can relate to that, because whether you're a Slovakian immigrant or an Italian one or a Jewish one from Russia, your small town upbringing and the big city and future and the two generations there is something we can relate to.
But it's a good question to know what takes a story and makes it into something more universal than the individual stories that everyone has. Everyone may have a story, but is your story a story that casts a light that is a universal light that applies to everybody? This guy who lost his store. That's a story. Could be a very personal story about that guy, and if that's all you're doing, that's fine.
Yeah.
But what makes it a bigger story is if the story tells the story of a man who came to this country. Mm-hmm. He's an immigrant, and he's forced out of the country that he's been in. He comes to this country. He finds a new way. He builds a life for himself, and in one moment, the life is destroyed, and he fights to prove that this country will support his growth. Maybe you can make that story big enough to make it into a feature.
That sounds like now we're taking the story and we're turning it into kind of an underdog hero story who believes so much in the American dream that even when the dream turns on him, he keeps fighting.
Well, to me, that's the interesting thing about that story, because if the guy's store was destroyed and he went to get the money from the government and the government said, sorry, guy, there's nothing we can do, and that's the end of the story.
Could have said, "Oh, this is bullshit."
It's not. I mean, that's a good after-school story about a guy, and the newspapers might do a article on it, and that's the end of it.
But if you want to use that to say, "Look, the American dream's not America; it's you, and we need to fight for it," and then you can almost kind of make something where people say, "You know what? Maybe I'll change my paradigm." And
perhaps, I think that's true. I mean, I think that the stories that I get involved in that are real stories tend to have a larger issue beyond just, they're human stories.
So it's it's inspiring in a way to somebody who feels like all the odds are against you to be able to say, well, if this person did that, maybe I can.
Well, I think of so many stories that are human stories. I remember, what was the movie a few years ago about the guy who started McDonald's? Not darts.
Was it called The Founder?
The Founder.
Yeah.
It really was about the Crocs. Who they took what was a small family-run restaurant and turned it into a franchise that became billions and billions of dollars. But they weren't the people who did the original thing. Right. The original thing were the McDonald brothers, whose name was used, but they weren't the beneficiaries. It was the entrepreneur who said, I see this in every town, on every corner, in every place, and made it into something. And that particular story has a dark side to it also, because it's not just about how great Kroc was. It also could be the fact that Ray Kroc was like a guy who took something from these guys and appropriated it, made it his own, and created it into something bigger.
That's
and
almost
left them behind.
That,
so
that
you
seems
have to look
be
at
a
both
bit
sides
of
of it.
And that for these bigger movies about these institutions is a bit of a formula. I think, like the Social Network, and there's always the guy with the idea and the guy who makes it big, and then but did he actually steal it from them or
somebody
did he
else?
not?
No, that's
but that's interesting, and I can see how that's something you can walk to a major producer with, or if you have the script, or you can maybe even get a meeting or get your script sold, or get a big actor to read it to begin the process.
Yeah, all of those are possible. And think of how many stories there are that we've seen as movies about individuals. For example, I'm looking at a script now. It's about the George Foreman grill.
Oh, okay.
George Foreman grill was not invented by George Foreman. They just brought George Foreman in, the guy who had this thing, and he was trying to sell it for years, and he didn't have anybody really to support it. George Foreman became the spokesperson for it and took it on and liked it. It suited him because it was, it was a story about food and how you make it cleaner and better and all that stuff. It made sense. The George Foreman grill made more money for George Foreman than anything else he ever, more than any
even
boxing, anything.
Yeah, wow.
It became $1 billion industry, and it was almost an accident how it was put together. It wasn't put together by him.
But you see, that's my point.
And it's a good story. Is it a good story?
Yeah, it's a great story, but that's the one that, it's never easy to sell, but that's the one that you have a clear entry point to any meeting with. Right? Now it's about execution, but it's like, well, we grew up, we know what the George Foreman grill is, and we, how did that happen? That's interesting. There's a hook, right?
Yeah.
It's a hook.
That's true.
Janice in Alabama.
Yeah.
Interesting life, grew up on a farm, weird things happen. She gets abducted by aliens or what have you. But who cares? It's Janice in Alabama. I'm not saying that literally. Yeah. If there is a Janice, which probably there is in Alabama, I'm not talking to you personally. But now that might be an interesting story there are a lot of stories out there that are not going to get the light of day because there are several barriers to entry, right? The audience itself, like you and me, I'll see anything that looks interesting to me, right? So there are things that are interesting to a lot of people. My wife loves movies like Juno and things like that, and I'll watch it with her. Little Miss Sunshine, fun film, I like those movies. I wouldn't run to the theater, but like if she'd said, "Let's go watch this new thing, as good as it gets," I'll go watch it. But that's the last audience. That's the last phase of convincing people, right? It's done. To get to the point where you have Jack Nicholson and Jodie Foster and people like that in this cast telling your story, directed by, produced by, budget behind it. Here's your challenge. You have to now make, let's call it the a crime in downtown LA story about this guy. You only have one movie you can make. That's the movie you have to make, and that's it. Somebody's got a gun to your head. You got to make this movie. Like, what do you do?
I got to find that guy. I mean,
let's say he came to you and said, "I have
no.
Story.
I don't mean the guy who wrote the story. I got to find the actor to play that guy
first. That's the first thing you do.
To get that story, if somebody came to me, and the whole story's wrapped up and has a sense to it, I might sit down with the screenwriter and say, "What do you think?" And try to figure out an interesting story that can be told. I mean,
now hurdle number one
within this. That's a big hurdle. Now, I'll give you an example.
Because the screenwriter costs money.
I have a friend, an Israeli friend who's a documentarian who did a story about Tal Brody. Tal Brody was an American basketball player who was drafted by the Bullets. He played for Indiana. He was at number 5 in the draft, but he was a Jewish guy. And in the 70s, just after the Six-Day War, not much longer after that, and Israel was still struggling to define itself. Nothing about today. I'm talking, this is a past moment. And in the international world of sports, there was the Euro Cup, which was the biggest cup for outside of the NBA, the biggest place to play basketball. The teams that won it every year were Italy, France, Russia, the big countries. Not so much.
Just so people know, Israel has 7 million people total.
7 million people.
Right,
You're talking about 1% of the world are Jews.
It's the size of New Jersey.
It's tiny.
Yeah.
And Brody came from New Jersey.
Yeah.
And his father was a Holocaust survivor, and he wound up being on the U.S. team that played in the international arena. Tal Brody was on the team with Bill Walton. And his father said, you should go play on the international circuit. And he did. He played and won on the international circuit. He was ready to come back to play for the Bullets, which he was chosen in the draft to play for. And he winds up getting a call from the Maccabees saying, "We'd like you to play for our team in Israel." That's Israel's national team.
Yeah.
He realizes that this is a challenge, and he takes the challenge. He said, "I'm going to put off my NBA career for a year, and I'm going to play for these guys." And he goes to play for them, and he winds up falling in love with the team and deciding he wants to take this team as far as he can. What he hopes to do is take it to the level of the Euro Cup, which Israel hasn't ever even thought about being at the top of. And he does. And he basically never comes back to play in the NBA, winds up being the star of the Maccabee team, and then finally the Maccabee team wins the Euro Cup. It was the biggest moment for Israel at that time. It put Israel on the map. That's what was said. Yeah. It made it a country that could be considered among other countries just because of a sporting event.
Yeah.
That's a story. Now, a guy told that story as a documentary, wants to do it as a feature. Well, it's a good story. There's a good story there. There's something that happened that was really interesting. Is it going to be interesting to people other than Israelis? I think so. Because it's just a good sports story.
It ties in basketball, too.
It's basketball. It's a good story, and there's good characters. Tal Brody's not the only player on the team.
Right.
A black player from the U.S. played on that team. After the team won, he decided to stay in Israel and became, became Jewish. He, he did, and wound up. His girlfriend was the top model in Israel. He stayed in Israel.
Well, but
there are a lot of elements
again, contrasting
to
the little store break-in story that has potential in terms of it being something. He started a movement, something that put a country on the map in a space that it wasn't there.
Exactly right.
Now going back to,
but you asked, I mean, to ask me why would I be interested in that story? It's a story that took place in the past. It's
right.
It's a good story. To me, a good story is a good story.
But see, now you have to convince a writer to write this for you.
Yeah.
A financier to put money into it, an actor to lead it.
Well, in this particular instance, the guy who did the documentary basically decided to take it and write a screenplay. He wrote a screenplay already.
All right.
So he's written a screenplay. So now you've got a screenplay. Obviously, you got to figure out who's going to play some of these people. You got to start finding a way to sell that story.
Now, if he didn't know you, what should he do? What should he do? Now, I have a script. I have a documentary that didn't really go anywhere, but it's on Amazon Prime.
It's on Amazon Prime. Right. It's a good documentary, and people have seen it.
Okay.
And he used the documentary as a deck, like you would have for a movie, to take it to some financiers who were willing to put up a little bit of money. I mean, they certainly didn't have the money to finance a feature film, but they put up enough to get the script written, to get him in touch with some of the athletes who were still alive. So he started doing his research. He found the people who were still around. He found all of the elements to put together a package that he could then take to investors. He thought, I probably need to get some Israeli money. Well, he's an Israeli. He went to Israel. He found some Israeli money. Not a lot, but enough to get started. Now he's on track.
Second money seems to be easier to get than first money.
I think definitely always easier to get money if you have some,
right?
Because people, you've
already
been validated in some way, and that's an important thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be millions of dollars, but thousands of dollars is very good. I met him through yet another friend of mine who's a writer who said, "Oh, you should meet this guy. You like to do these kinds of stories." I met him. I liked him. I don't know yet that this is a marriage, that we're going to do anything with it, but I like it enough to take to think about it and to try to see if I can be helpful in making that movie. But it's a process every time. Every movie is like that. So everybody out there who has a story that they want to tell, they have to figure out a way to get it down. I mean, get it written. I think that's a key.
Good. Like not just, I'm going to sit down and do one draft, brain bomb it onto a page.
No, you got to do more than that.
Yeah.
You got to do more than that, and you have to recognize taste and good quality and all of that. And I mean, when I come into a project, I tend to look at things mostly after someone has already done some of that work. Someone has already, if it's a script that exists, they've already done the work. If it's not a script, but there's enough elements to it, and I can think of a writer who might be good for it, I can be helpful in that too.
There might not be an answer to this, but if there were, I call it closet creative, has been fascinated with movies, it just never had the courage or the means to go after it, right? He's looking at retirement coming up, and he's thinking, I'll give it one last shot here. He can't go to film school. I mean, you could, but you don't want to go to film school at 58 and spend 4 years and $200,000, right?
I want to hear this story. Okay, so?
So, no, it's a hypothetical guy, but I've spoken to a lot of these guys. He has ideas. He's got stories. Not a formally trained writer. Maybe reads, watches a lot of movies, Tarantino style.
Okay.
Definitely no connections, no understanding of how to make a film. But a great understanding of kind of just like telling stories, what excites people. So is he better off getting the writer's journey and Save the Cat and screenplay and learning how to write a script and then go out with that? Is it better for him to start putting a producer hat on and start thinking about how do I get other people to work for me to do this?
I don't know George, so I can't tell you, because there are those Georges out there who probably could write the screenplay, but in most cases, they're probably not those people.
Yeah.
So you want to get the story told by somebody who can tell it better than you can. And
learn how to pitch it well? Or
well, you might want to learn how to pitch it. That's a big thing. You might want to pull together what the elements of the story are that are going to excite a third party, somebody else, me, you, somebody else. What do I need to take my story and turn it into? If you don't have, what I'm saying is, if you don't have chutzpah and entrepreneurial ability to see that, you shouldn't do it.
So you need to be resourceful.
Don't waste your time.
Yeah.
Don't waste your time. If everybody is sitting home in their armchair with an idea that's better than what they saw on television. Right. It doesn't mean they know how to make it.
Prove it.
It doesn't mean that, prove it. I mean, basically prove it. The way you're going to prove it is to figure out how to do it. Now, there aren't books that teach you that. There are books that tell you a lot about that stuff, but the most important element is your drive to figure out what you need. You also, I think, in a large way, have to know what your own failings are. You have to know what is the best thing about what you have and what is the least. If you're not a writer, don't waste your time. You're going to be spending a lot of time trying to figure out something that isn't going to be very good. And you may know that you're not capable of doing that, but maybe you know somebody who does, or you want to put your producer hat on, which means, how are you going to find the writer who's going to be the right writer for this?
If you talk to established writers,
well, if you're able to.
Well, but it's an incredible feat to write a script for an established writer. Even Aaron Sorkin notoriously takes like 18 months to write a script, and they're 300 pages long. And so I think the producer, whose name eludes me right now, for that film said that he was trying to get Aaron Sorkin to write that thing for like 2 years. And this is an established producer, so you can't just call up a writer and be like, here's my idea.
No.
It has to be really damn good if they're the kind of writer that's going to be able to bring this to a studio. And think about yourself without any resources. What would you do? Now, maybe every movie is different, so I think resourcefulness, let's keep that there. I think that is 100%, because if you look at the story of The Elephant Man,
well, I think I've been pretty resourceful in terms of figuring out ways to get things done. It still takes a tremendous amount of time. I've made 2 movies over the last 10 years.
Have 2 movies ever been produced the same way for you, financed by the same people, or is everyone completely different?
Everyone has been completely different. Now, that does not mean that's true for everybody. There's certain situations where you may get into a situation where you can make multiple movies.
Then you turn it into a business model.
Then you're Mel Brooks. Business model. You're more Jason than Mel Blum, Brooks. You could be, you could be any
Adam Sandler. All these.
Those are artists who do that. But I'm saying there are a lot of producers who are not comics, who didn't have another career. Adam Sandler did. Mel Brooks did. But you didn't have that. Right. You just focused on figuring out a way to create a model. An example of that would be, say, Hallmark will make 15 movies. They're all family movies. They're all one after another. They're going to make them in one location. This is happening right now in northern New York State. They're going to put them in one studio, and they're going to use the same crew and just move them on to the next one, the next one, the next one. You can do that.
Yeah.
The high end of that is Marvel doing one hero movie after another. They do the same thing. Now, if that's what you want to do, and you want to be the Henry Ford of movie making, and you just want to turn out the same black car, fine. But if you want to just tell stories and tell your story, then you're in a different business.
You have to take each one.
You're not. You're not in the business of cranking out cookie cutter versions of what you're doing. You're mainly in the version of telling one great story, and after another, and they're different. Everyone is different. Look at an entrepreneur like Coppola. He's an entrepreneur, but he's also a filmmaker.
Yeah.
You look at his films; they're not the same. Yes, he did The Godfather 1, 2, 3. That was almost an accident of fate because of a variety of reasons. But he's not a guy who does sequels and as a form of art.
Well, it would be ill-advised to not say, okay, if a studio comes to you and says, look, it was a smash hit, let's make a second one. Great, but that wasn't his intention.
No, the interesting thing with him, Godfather 2 is one of the very rare sequels which many, many, many people feel is better than the original. It was a great movie. It won the Academy Award for Best Picture, but aside from that, it was a terrific movie and maybe even better than the first movie he made. That is rare, that a sequel will exceed the original project. Most people know that. I mean, you go into it, we've talked about it with other things, like you do Blair Witch 1, Blair Witch 2 is a dead loss. I mean, it cost $15 million.
It was over.
The shtick is over. The only reason to do it is to make money. The only reason to do Godfather 2 was not, at least from Coppola's point of view, maybe from the studio's point of view, yeah, we were successful with 1, let's make 2 and see if we can be successful again. That may be their thinking. His thinking was, I got to tell a better story than the first one. I'm going to tell an amazing story about, the first one was really just the beginning of what happened to Don Corleone. Now we're going to tell the next version that takes us right up to the present time.
But he probably has a stack of scripts about, the underground golf club, then the lady who climbed a mountain, and all these completely different things that he probably would also like to see made. So do you feel like, because we're always juggling, any producer, any filmmaker that I really know,
well, let's get the first film made. Let's get that first film made.
So then that was kind of I'm getting to that too, because let's say you have a few ideas, you have these concepts, maybe you've written 5 scripts and have 10 other ideas. My approach to how to solve that might be the same as yours, might be different, but I kind of look at the big mistake I see people make is they write Star Wars, they've never done anything before. They don't exactly Star Wars. They write a big epic that would be a massive thing to do, because ultimately Star Wars did get made, and Lucas wasn't some big, huge known filmmaker before that.
No, he had done a very small little film called THX that was really small.
You just said the key there. There was that little small thing before.
That little small film got him his next opportunity.
That's the one people overlook, I think, because Robert Rodriguez did Once Upon a Time in Mexico, Sin City, but he had El Mariachi before that. The Spanish $7,000 guerrilla film he made with his own credit cards, and his whole theory there was, instead of writing an epic story out of your head, see what you got around you, what you can use, and write something there. Like, I had a Mexican town, I had a guitar case, a turtle. Yeah. What could I do for that? That's his entry point. David Lynch did Eraserhead. Then he got Elephant Man with you.
Right.
Well, there are some exceptions. And we're also talking about 90s, which was a different time, right? People aren't quite in the same mood to help people develop their careers anymore.
No, but I mean, even Scorsese did his first little movie,
Mel Brooks.
Mel Brooks did The Producers, which was a very small, the original
Producers version 1. Tiny movie. Yours is the remake.
But he did that first version, and that was really what took him into the world. And he did actually a second movie, which was The 12 Chairs.
Was that enough for him to show what he can do to get?
No, I think The Producers was the movie that got him Blazing Saddles, which really took him off. Blazing Saddles was the movie that really exploded Mel's opportunities. From that point on, Young Frankenstein, Silent Movie, all those other things came later, but he needed to do that big movie, but that big movie came out of the little movie. And you're right. I mean, in many, many, many cases, most cases that I can think of, most directors have had that smaller entry point in order to be able to get.
In fact, Rodriguez, I think at the time, and I don't think you can, agents, the world has changed, but he was saying that before that, he had a short film, I think, called Bedhead, which was something that got him an agent in LA first.
Before he did
El Mariachi. And then he did El Mariachi, and then that agent was able to take El Mariachi and start a bidding war with the 5 studios, and I think that's what ended up.
Even David Lynch had short films
with the grandmother.
Grandmother, which was funded by the American Film Institute. He got into the American Film Institute with that, and then while he was there, the American Film Institute became the support system to allow him to make Eraserhead.
Now, even though this seems daunting, and I mean, if anybody's listening here who's like, you're in your 50s, 60s, something, you're trying to get started, it is tougher. But these are not huge periods of time we're talking about here either. You can put a good film together in a year, maybe 2, independently, if you're resourceful. Mm-hmm. Even places like Alabama have tax credits for very low budget things. I think you can apply there. You can get grants. You can get 50 grand, 20 grand to make something small. You do that, you crush it. Mm-hmm. Let's say you make a film year 1. It's really good. It gets into good festivals, maybe gets some momentum going there. Maybe it's a short film that leads to your ability to make a film. But like, take a 2 or 3 year window. If you knock your first movie out of the park, a year or 2 after that, you might be looking at a whole different situation.
No question. But I mean, you have to really crush it. When I was doing the short films, those were the calling cards for those directors to move on and continue working in the business. Right. You know, they didn't necessarily make major features. A lot of them went into television. A lot of them wound up becoming TV directors and were very successful and continued and are still doing it. Anybody starting today, the equipment is easier. You don't need a company to supply you with an iPhone 16. You know, if you want to make the movie on that, you can. You don't need as much of a system within which to work. You can collapse the amount of time it takes for you to take your idea to a form that can be shown to somebody.
Do you know what happened between that short and Eraserhead? How did he actually get the money and the means to make Eraserhead?
He was given a grant from the American Film Institute.
For the short, though.
To make The Grandmother.
Yeah.
And as a result of having done that, the American Film Institute said, why don't you come out and we're going to let you be a fellow at the American Film Institute, and you can work here and make your next film here. So that's what he did.
He made Eraserhead with them.
He made it while he was at the American Film Institute.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. He was a bit of an outlier even there. They didn't quite get him. So they let him work in the stables at the American Film Institute. And he did, and he was working on his movie. When he finished the movie, normally every movie that you make at the American Film Institute, they put their name on. Mm-hmm. Well, they were not sure about this movie. About that one. So he wound up acquiring the movie back.
Oh, so he owned it. All right.
And he owned it.
Oh, okay.
And that is never happened on any movie from the American Film Institute that I know about since that day.
Okay.
And it was probably one of the few movies that was made at the American Film Institute that made a ton of money. He made a lot of money off of that movie.
So what did he do then? He went to, distributors?
No, he went to a distributor. He found a distributor in New York, basically took it on. They put it on. It started to create a stir. It became a midnight sensation. It was shown in theaters at midnight. And it started to build an audience. It played a lot in a lot of different places, and it was constantly...
Enough to make noise.
You know, many major film directors like Stanley Kubrick claimed it was one of his favorite films. All of these people saw the movie. They got to see it.
But then he met you.
Well, it was out there, but it was just the beginning.
Well, I guess my question
there is... It was the beginning.
Because...
Nobody knew it was going to be successful yet.
But somebody, in this case you... extended their hand out of the legitimized gated industry.
Me among a few others, but yes.
Well, sure.
Together.
You're the one who said, this is our director.
Yes, right.
And that was your decision to make. Yeah. And you had seen nothing other than Eraserhead.
That's right.
And
by the time I chose him as a director, I had seen a couple of his other things. I knew where his mind was.
Did he find you or did you find him?
No, I found him. Well, it was a kind of a mutual thing. A friend of both of ours kind of put us together.
Okay.
And
I remember he read the script and said, I need to do this. So there was some tenacity on his end.
Yeah.
And chutzpah, because to come to a guy like you and be like, I need to do this.
If the name of the script wasn't The Elephant Man, David Lynch probably would never have said that he wanted to do it. Right. And I might never have sent him the script.
Weird enough. So this happens to be one of those...
The name of it was intriguing enough to him for him to want to look at it, and that was the beginning of everything.
Kind of a serendipitous thing, though, that because he's one of a kind, and
he definitely was, and we miss him greatly. He was an amazing guy, and I'm delighted that people are reassessing his career in a very positive way in terms, because he's a major influence on so many people, not just in terms of how they think, but even in terms of how they film. I mean, there was a movie last year that was shot in Holland that was one of the finalists for Best Foreign Film, and it was totally influenced by David. There's absolutely no question. You look at the film, you could have, these were straight out of David's head,
Yeah.
some of the images that were in there. And he's still influencing tons of people to be fresh, to stay with their ideas, to be more abstract in their ability to tell stories rather than, too didactic. I mean, it is his style, was his style.
So I think there's a few things people need to then think about if going back to having an idea, a vision, and not knowing where to go, especially mid or later in life, right?
Well, but there is a point in here that you can't deny, and it happens with many, many, many of the directors we're talking about, and that is being lucky.
Yeah,
you have to. You have to take advantage of the luck when it happens.
Yeah,
a lot of people don't.
But
I mean,
luck
is
requires It's work. Preparation meets opportunity.
Yeah, that's
if you're
exactly
not prepared,
right.
If David Lynch would have met you and he hadn't
ready,
done that yet,
wouldn't have happened.
No, because you're looking for a director now. You had a script now.
Yeah, I had to find
you
somebody.
You can't wait for him to go out and make Eraserhead.
No.
Yeah.
When I say luck, I'm not talking about a bolt from the blue. I think it's taking advantage of the moment.
Of something, a crossroads, and you also have to be attentive to those things. I think a lot of people are standing on a gold mine and they're too busy to look down and pick it up, right? Like sometimes you just have these interactions, you get to know somebody, you have something where if you're not thinking about it right, you just let that opportunity pass and it might not come again. I guess the takeaway is you got to be a scholar of the craft that you're trying to get into, because if you don't understand what a producer does, what a director does, what the actors do, how a script is formatted, you're already giving yourself a bit of a disadvantage, right? So you're just understanding the fundamentals of how the whole thing even works.
Yes.
Then you also have to understand that there's a business on the other side and there's an audience that business needs to serve. So there's like three things. You have to get what you're talking about, but you also have to understand that you're trying to get somebody behind you to get the project together. That's your first kind of need to convince people of like, why is this relevant? Why is it timely? Why will it be good? Why are you the right person to do this? But then they have to take that along with you and sell it to an audience too.
That too. That's absolutely critical. Sometimes I would say that it's good to be, I hate to use the word, but it's good to be a pest.
Yeah.
I mean, people who come to me with something that was maybe a short film that was pretty good and just kept calling me. And there's some people who keep calling me, I will not ever answer.
There was something.
In this particular instance, I followed up with this particular individual who kept calling me, and we wound up having a dialogue. And I wound up becoming an executive producer on a couple of short films that he did because I believed he had something to say and I was interested in being helpful. He now has a deal with a major studio to make one of the shorts into a major movie. These things happen. When the right one comes along and winds up hanging around, be it Quentin Tarantino, or which he probably hung on somebody, I mean, sometimes it sticks and it works.
That's important. I get a lot of questions. Well, how often do you follow up? And when it's like, until they tell you to stop.
Yeah.
You're in your head, you're thinking, people don't realize the average open rate for an email is like 20 to 30%. So, there's a 60% chance they're not even opening your first email. And then, I emailed them 5 times and never hear back. Call them. Text them. Walk into the office. I'm not suggesting you do that, but like, actually, it's frowned upon in many ways, but then you also hear the other side of it where you hear somebody, well, I tried this, and I DM'd them on Instagram, and I emailed them on LinkedIn, and then finally we met at an event, and somebody says, you're the guy who keeps pestering me, and then something happens, right? So,
but it happens that way.
It happens.
That does happen.
Don't be criminal about it. But,
No. Yes. Obviously, you can't be criminal about it, but, and then it happens in all of those instances. It happens at festivals. It happens through distant contacts that happen. People say, oh, I know somebody, and you find a connection, a family connection tells you about somebody and you read it. I've had many of those. Most of those go nowhere.
Yeah.
But every so often, one of them does. One of them is really, I say, okay, And now I'm not suggesting that putting my hand on somebody's head and saying you're a director is going to make them a director. I can be helpful to some directors.
You can open some doors.
And I can open some doors that they may not have.
And that brings me to another point.
I think a lot of some filmmakers did it by becoming critics. They wrote about the individual in order to get to meet the individual.
I have friends who have podcasts, and they interview notable guests, and then they become acquainted with each other.
Enough to get that,
we've had some
guest to
interesting
read
people
something,
here.
And maybe maybe it turns into something.
I think one thing that I see across the board a lot is sort of the value of having a mentor in the space, having somebody that's, they don't necessarily have to be Mel Brooks. I think, you had a great opportunity there. Are there other mentors that got you to the point before you were?
I would say Paul Mazursky. I worked with Paul Mazursky a little bit, and I got to know him, and he was a mentor to me. But Mel was the biggest because he was the most directly involved in the work that I've done since. Finding a mentor is a good thing, I think. I'm not asking more people to call me. That's not what I'm doing right now because I got plenty of people who call me now. I could spend all my time doing just answering phone calls from people.
The mentor
people
also has to believe in you.
Scripts which I won't read because, first of all, I'm not going to read a story. Anything I say on a podcast, somebody can go off and turn into a movie. I want to save some of these for myself.
Yeah.
Plus the fact that I think we may have talked about the fact that if you send a script to a potential mentor, a filmmaker, somebody like that, it really is not something that they can read because it becomes a legal issue. If you've read it and you wind up making anything that is even remotely like it in some future date, you're opening yourself up to a lawsuit. So you don't want to be in a situation. So you're not going to read stuff that's unsolicited. You have to protect against those things. So it's tricky. It's tricky. It's a tricky thing. In terms of finding mentors, I think is a good thing. I think it's always good to have somebody who's already been doing it.
If nothing else, just to say, yes, this is good, this is not good, don't do this, do this.
And if the first thing they say to you is, don't get in this business, it's a mistake, don't listen to them. If you really believe that you have a good story, don't listen to the people who are naysayers, because there are some who are going to say to you, directors that I work with, who when I told them I was dealing with young people, I said, we don't want more directors. We want to protect the profession so that we can make our movies. And if all these new people come in, they're going to push us out. Well, I don't think that way. I don't think anybody smart. Be better. That's all.
Yeah. I think that's an important thing you said, because for some reason in this industry, more than in almost any other one, that's a recurring theme. But if you're, again, I guess going back to resourcefulness, if your expectation is to become a big-time director right away and not put any groundwork in, but really any profession worth doing in a sense of fulfillment, right, long term. So let's say you're a lawyer. I think people forget that you also can't just snap your fingers and be a lawyer either, and it's not a real job until you actually go through school, get your bar exam, start your practice or what have you, and that's years and years and hundreds of thousands of dollars invested.
It's true, but if you want to
be different,
if you want to be a cinematographer, maybe you want to start by being a photographer.
Right. Well, that's the beauty of it. You can find your way there as long as you know where you're going, what you want, and then build step by step, movement towards it. And I don't know that age is I'm sure certainly you get to a certain point where just the thought of starting a whole new career might be daunting. But, when you're in your second half of life, I feel like you also can't look at it the same way as, well, it took me as long as it took me to get here, because you were a kid and didn't know anything and you didn't know life. Now you do. You've learned your lessons.
Yes, you can shorten the time.
You can shorten it. Yeah. You can do in 5 to 10 years what you would have done in 20 to 30 years. Who's to say you can't have 3 entire careers over the course of your lifetime?
Look, I think we're learning now that most people at the retirement of their first career tend to have a second career in some ways. It's more likely people are living longer. That's another thing. And they're outliving the careers in some cases that they've had, and they want to try something else. Or they may have had what was a hobby now becomes a primary source of their income. Yeah. And that becomes their next career. So I think the likelihood of having multiple careers in a lifetime is much, much greater now than it ever was.
That's a beautiful note to end on, I think. But
we'll get to that.
Yeah. And I think what we've learned here today, I feel like, is be persistent, right? Yeah, if you want it, you're the one that's going to have to push, but you got to push, and you got to be iterative. You have to see, well, this isn't working.
Yeah.
What am I doing that I need to change to get it to work? You got to have a good storytelling ability. You got to refine that craft at least. You got to know what a good story is and what's going to appeal to people and yourself. And then be resourceful. Like, don't be Homer Simpson trying to get the donut and getting electrocuted every time. What can you do instead of finding reasons not to? I'm too old. I'm too far away. I don't know anybody. I don't have any money.
No, you slide off the thing that isn't working to the thing that may work, and you just keep doing it. I mean,
start asking how can I instead of why can't I? Right? How can I find the money? How can I get the connection? How can I get the story in front of somebody?
It's interesting. I have a grandson who's going to be going to film school, but in gaming, and he wrote a speech the other day, and I'm going to quote from my grandson, but he basically said, everybody suffers a series of failures in life. Nobody just gets through without ever failing. But failure doesn't mean the end of something. It just means not yet. So, I didn't quite get it now, but I'm going to try again and I'll get it. Yeah, not yet. Means that there's another opportunity that's going to come along. I believe that every time. I mean, certainly a lot of things that I try or I think are going to be great don't make it. I can't get them made. Yeah. So I'll move to something that can, and I'll just continue.
Just keep going. Yeah. Mind like water. The water's not mad at the rock. It just goes around it. Right?
That's a good line.
There's one thing that I'm recalling now, and I forget the name of the shoe company, but I remember the origin story of that, which was really inspiring because the person who had the idea for the shoe company wasn't some big shoemaker. And he knew from what he had gathered that to launch a shoe brand, New York City's the place to be. You got to have product. You got to have a showroom. You got to get the word out. But he did know that he didn't have the finances because he hadn't started anything yet, to get the money to make the first batch of shoes from a U.S. investor. No way anybody was going to give him that. So he found shoe factories in Italy that were struggling, not struggling bad enough to where they're shutting down, but they needed product, and he convinced them to loan him the money, provided they would become the shoe factory for his product. So they gave him the money to create the first round. Now he had another problem. He didn't have the money to get a fancy showroom.
Fifth Avenue,
Saks, right. So there's Saks and Barney's and all that, and who the hell is he? So he said, okay, well, what if we kind of make a bit of an event around it, and we'll park a big semi-truck that the back of it's all decked out with the shoes and everything in it. Mm-hmm. It'll be a unique kind of New York street experience and all that. But then the city... We're like, you're out of your mind. You can't park a bicycle there. What are you, crazy? I'm in New York City. You're not going to park an 18-wheeler anywhere. And he said, well, how can I park it there? Right? And he said, and they said, you can't. You either have to be a city, official servicing company or doing electric work or something, or you got to be a production company and get your permit and all that. So he changed his name for his company to whatever, Mark something Shoes to Productions.
Okay.
And said, why don't we document this and make a feature-length film called The Origin of a Shoe Company? Got a filmmaker, and they're shooting it.
Got a permit, put the thing out.
Changed the name, got the permit to put the truck there as a production company. Sold like 46,000 shoes in the period of time that he was there. Documented it all, so he's got his great marketing and stuff, but that launched the brand. And then he had the cash flow from those sales to continue and get the showroom. Now, how many opportunities along the way did this guy have to say, I just can't do it? It's impossible. They won't give me the money. I can't get a location. I can't.
No, but you said it before. It's the water and the rock. You have to go around the things that aren't working for you or figure out a way to make it happen. We do it in film all the time. I mean, we get no's. We were told no's all the time.
Even on set, we were talking about the Billy Friedkin film. What was it called? The one you were on?
Yes, The Brinks Job.
The Brinks Job, where there was a big challenge that he was adamant about having this diner set.
Yes,
and it would have destroyed your finances to go all the way out and shoot.
Yes,
and move
I couldn't have done it in a day. I would have lost $100,000. So I moved the diner.
So you went, which is something that a normal person just doesn't think to do, but you get creative. You have to.
It is part of the job in every level. You have to figure out a creative solution to problems. If it's a money problem, what is a way to make it happen for less money?
So just
put
for
the
context,
guy on the bus instead of the subway.
That was
another one.
Travel.
But you figure,
for the context here, if they haven't seen that episode, you crunched the numbers.
Yes.
And you said, if we do a company move, which means everybody from set has to move, all the equipment, all the gear, all the people, they got to move 2 hours, 3 hours away. It would cost a fortune. We'd lose a couple days.
We'll lose a day. We'll lose a full day.
Which is expensive.
We can't do 2 locations that are 50 miles apart in the same day.
But then you
go... Unless we made... Is there a way to make the 2 locations next to each other? And that was that was what made the solution possible. We moved the diner to the location.
But it's like an unhinged thing to even bring up when you think about it at surface level. But it's the only real solution, and it did work. You said, well, if we can't move our film crew there, we'll uproot the diner, which is a real functioning diner. We will take it off of its foundation, put it on a truck, drive it down to us, set it down, film, put it back on the truck, and bring it back to the diner owner.
And that cost, which may have been $10,000, huge, was $10,000 as against another $150,000 a day.
Now, this is $10,000 in the 90s. Right?
Yeah, I'm saying whatever it was an expensive move, but nothing compared to what it would have cost us if we had to shoot an extra day. To be able to take 2 half days, put them together, and make 1 day out of it instead of 2 days out of it was saving $150,000 a day. How could you complain about having spent $10,000 to move something back and forth as against the $150,000? And
you had even another layer of audacity in that you didn't even tell the director that you were doing it.
No, I didn't. That's another story. Yeah, that they can go back and watch that.
Right. Okay, so
hey, man.
Persistence and hey, thank you. That was a good one. I hope it inspires a lot of people out there.
Me too.
Cool.